Green flag number one, you've stopped apologizing for things that you didn't do. You're no longer a people pleaser. You're not saying sorry for your self-identity and saying things that you believe in, and you're definitely not apologizing for things that you haven't done. But paradoxically, you also have green flag number two, which is you've started apologizing for things that you have done wrong. You need both number one and number two together, depending on the context and depending on your personal history, because this video is about celebrating your own progress. And if you know when to say sorry or when not to say sorry, your interpersonal relationship skills are leveling up year after year, because a lot of us are caught in old patterns of either being way too people-pleasing or way too standoffish. And if you know the right time to say sorry and the right time to say, hey, that's not my fault, I think actually you hold a little bit more of the responsibility on this one. You are well on the journey to having a whole array of green flags to be proud of. So let's go to number three, which is actually the inspiring point for this question. This question I got on my 22 red flags video in relationship, which I released a couple months ago. This is the inverse, and I thought, well, why not make it about us rather than about romantic relationships? Number three, green flag that you should celebrate in yourself. You know the difference between safety and stagnation. You're not caught in the comfort zone, but you know what it means to be comfortable. And this is a nuanced point that I don't want you to lose sight of, because if you've started to develop in a healing way towards whatever lifestyle you want, and you've noticed you get a little bit lazy, or a little bit apathetic, or maybe you're avoiding things that you know you should be doing, you've fallen into the comfort zone or the stagnation zone. But that can't be confused at a lower level of consciousness with being safe, because safety for some people can feel like not doing very much, and it can mean things like taking rest when you need to take rest, or otherwise being aware that you can't do everything at once. If you know your limits and you know what safety feels like, and you don't shame yourself for being maybe lazy or being in a comfort zone, you know that difference, which is going to depend for each independent person, then you've got a number three green flag to definitely be proud of. Let's move on to number four, and this is one that's very confronting. I'm looking over at my list over here. This is going to be a wonderfully comprehensive, wide-ranging video, so please stick around all the way to the end. There's some controversial ones nested inside of the more practical ones. But number four, this is kind of controversial. You have stopped lying so much, and at the very least, you've stopped exaggerating the truth. This is one of those adolescent wounds, especially for people who grew up in families where there wasn't too much witnessing. Maybe your parents didn't really connect with you or didn't try to understand you, or maybe you had a few romantic relationships where you always felt like you were never really seen. You might have developed a bit of a shadow pattern of exaggerating the truth, bending reality, or outright lying to get attention. Now, this lying pattern could also be tied into not apologizing or over-apologizing, but the baseline green flag to celebrate is if you know that you're not lying as much as you used to lie, and you're not exaggerating stories with embellishments and grandiose fantasies of something that's worth paying attention to, and you feel comfortable just sharing your day-to-day experiences without making it larger than life. That's something to be proud of, because most people feel an insecurity where they have to cover it up with a certain form of grandiosity or some kind of attention-seeking pattern, and if you're beyond that stage of awareness, that is a massive green flag. Number five green flag, looking at my list, super simple, don't need to say much on this. You exercise at least 3 times per week. And again, this is a green flag that you can be proud of. If you're not there just yet, consider this green flag and also the entirety of this video as maybe some ambitious, aspirational goals and intentions that are generally good to work towards. For the sake of simplicity, you exercise or you do sport, you do yoga, you do weightlifting, you go for long hikes, you swim, you run, whatever it might be, at least 3 times per week, ideally 4 or 5 times per week, ideally every single day in some form or another. But at the absolute baseline, a massive green flag in your own personal development, you take your health seriously by moving your body on a consistent basis in a way that feels good for you and increases your longevity. You're not dissociated like a talking head on a stick. You don't see your body as something which is separate, like a puppet to be marionetted, not marinated, marionetted on the string, unless you do marionate yourself in salts and spices, in which case that might be a bit of a yellow flag, maybe even a red flag for a certain type of person, but a green flag, you look after your body. Let's continue with a few more healthy habits, rapid fire. Number 6 green flag, you're sober, or at least sober-minded. You're already putting restrictions on your drink and your substance consumption. Maybe you drink only for special occasions, but ideally, you're already sober. Big green flag. If you've already achieved this and you've unplugged from a party lifestyle, well done. It might tie in with number 7, which is you're eating organic food and drinking clean water, and you've lost your appetite for junk food. If you were ever someone who used to really get excited at the idea of fast food or some kind of pre-packaged confectionery in the grocery store, and now you've healed your relationship with food, you eat mainly whole foods, ideally organic foods, you drink clean water, and you don't pump your body full of chemicals and trashy substances, you can really be proud of that, because most people never get there. It might seem normal. It might seem like a baseline. Well, yeah, of course I look after my body. Of course I eat good food and I try my best. Maybe every now and again I have a cookie or some ice cream, but, you know, I look after my body. Just pause to appreciate that. You can really be proud of the fact that if you're exercising, staying sober, and eating good, healthy food, you're probably in the top 5%, top 1% of people who look after themselves in the whole world, maybe even a point percentage, I don't know, but definitely be proud of it. And also it ties into this number 8 green flag, which is you know how to manage your money, which doesn't mean managing your ambition towards wealth generation at stocks and shares and income per month and making sure your cash flow is perfect. At the very basic level, you can celebrate the green flag of knowing that you've got the right balance between spending and saving. This looks different for everybody, but there's usually a pattern in our teenage years and in our 20s, and sometimes continuing over into middle age, where we don't quite understand our own personal finances. And if you have that basic safety mechanism in check, and you're not going to be stressed out because of the bills that aren't to be paid, or you feel like a sudden emergency is going to knock you out, you've got some deep safety, which you can really celebrate. Most people don't have these 4 altogether. The basic self-care of the body and self-care in the form of financial self-support. That's something really to be proud of. Just make sure to actually celebrate it. Let's move on to a few more controversial ones. Now moving into green flag number 10. You are healing your sensual side. I can't say the word with an X in the middle, but you're healing your sensual side, and I've written down that this means that you don't pedestalize romantic relationships, you're not being promiscuous in the club, and you've also stopped spending time on adult websites. You're no longer, like this character, spending a little bit too much time out in the cornfield, watching the stalks sway in sensual manners. See, he's even blurred out. You're not watching corn videos, not like Mr. Corn, who spends way too much time out there. You know, I've caught him in questionable situations, actually, but I can't say the word beginning with P, I can't say the word with X. This is YouTube, I have to censor my language like I'm a baby, but you've healed that. Or at least you're significantly healing those old patterns. You're no longer fixated on either the digital version of adults bumping against each other and thinking that's a good use of your time. You're no longer obsessing about the next romantic encounter, and in terms of your own sensual connection with yourself, you're not caught in shallow patterns or very overly stimulating vibrator patterns. You have a more nuanced relationship with your own body. If you're already there, that's a massive green flag. You have healed so much that most people never understand and they never work through. So, well done on that one. Let's move on to green flag number 11. This is kind of related, but it's not just necessarily sensuality. You don't escape into a fantasy world. You're not daydreaming in a way that keeps you safe, and this is particularly about healing the grandiosity wound. If you've got this green flag, you're not in a situation where you hate your life, you hate your relationships, and you're feeling down and out about your future, but you're keeping yourself safe by dissociating into an incredible fantasy land like a child would in a difficult situation. Some of us have had difficult childhoods, and sometimes it's appropriate to develop the fantasy narrative to keep us safe in unlivable situations. I'm not trying to shame anyone. It's appropriate. If you're a 5-year-old stuck in a family home and you need to daydream of a better future, I get it. The same as if you're in a difficult relationship or a bad living situation in an unstable country, you can daydream and fantasize, and it can be healthy. There's healthy daydreaming, there's healthy active imagination, there's visioning. This is all fantastic. But the green flag in particular that I really want you to celebrate is if you know the difference between healthy visioning and unhealthy compulsive fantasy, either towards salvational boyfriends or girlfriends, or maybe the magical moment where you win the lottery or something good happens to you out of the blue for no effort of your own, which can also be sometimes a bit of the spiritual grandiosity of thinking that manifestation is just going to come to you like that. If you feel that pattern, major green flag in yourself, because it means that you're grounded in reality. Let's move on to green flag number 12, halfway point. Gonna sip some lemon and honey, which I've heard is good for vocal performance. I'm trying to improve my vocality, especially for long videos like this one. Number 12 green flag, you consistently rate your work days as 8 out of 10 or more. Not everyone has the perfect career. Maybe your job is good enough, but it's not completely everything that you'd want. But if you rate it 8 out of 10 on most days of the week that you work, you feel good about what you're doing. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's great. 8 out of 10. You can really track this. For the next month, you can write down at the end of the day, what do I feel? How was today? If it's dipping down below a 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, if it's actively in a 5 out of 10 or 4 out of 10, it's clearly time for a change. But if you've got fulfilling enough work, that's a huge green flag. And again, all of these coming together halfway into this list, if you're stacking a variety of these green flags, you are going to be in such a mentally healthy place. You can't avoid issues of relationships and career, but with green flag number 12, you have a really easy way to rate your work days and track that over time, so you know if you need to make a change, or you can otherwise be a little bit more grateful. Green flag number 13, relating to work, you know how to rest. This means that you get enough sleep per night. For me, I try and aim for 9 hours of sleep, and you also know how to balance your work schedule. Not everyone is interested in a work-life balance, and honestly, I think it's almost somewhat of a fallacious idea that you should always have a nice balance between resting and working, because for people like myself, I absolutely adore what I do for work, and I have a lot of personal identity and personal meaning associated in my teaching work, my therapeutic work, and my coaching work. So my work-life balance means that I take Monday off. I take 1 day off per week, but even when I take a day off, I go offline, which is something that we'll turn back to in another green flag. My work-life balance is probably going to be quite different from your work-life balance because I have a particular temperament. I'm the kind of guy that if you put me in a forest and gave me an axe, I'm just going to start cutting down trees and building a house, because even if I didn't have to, I want to do something that engages me and engages my brain, engages my muscles, and has some kind of creativity element. I want to take on projects because it's fulfilling for me. But you need to figure out your own work-life balance, and if you're at a point in your life where you know how much exertion and how much rest you need in terms of sleep, in terms of leisure time, and you feel like you can consistently balance your weeks over a month and over a year, that is something to be proud of. Most people don't figure this out, and they end up in very unfortunate situations with heart attacks or other kinds of arthritic conditions in their 50s and 60s because they repress their desire for more time off. Just pay attention to it. We're moving on now to 2 very important green flags, green flag number 14 and green flag number 15. They are polar opposites of each other, but they're very much interconnected. Number 14 green flag. You have boundaries of things coming in. You have inwards boundaries. You're protected against energetic vampires and people who are trying to take your time and your energy. You have learned to say no. You don't feel guilty for saying no to people who are trying to take something from you in a non-consensual or otherwise disrespectful way. This is a massive lesson that I've seen people spend years trying to really figure out, and if you've got it, wow, what a gift. The power of no. No, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not available for this. Or even more politely, hey, that sounds great, but I'm not available for this, or I don't think that's something that I want to do, but I appreciate the invitation. There's levels of intensity, and it depends on the level of intensity that's coming your way, how much politeness you want to give out. Again, looking back to the very first green flags of not overly apologizing for things that you shouldn't apologize about. Just have your boundaries in check. And if you have your boundary in check, it's not only the inwards boundary, number 14 green flag, it's also number 15 green flag, which is that you have an outwards boundary. And this means that you're not oversharing. You've broken the habit of telling everyone about your healing journey and your incredible esoteric ideas and your very smart concepts of reality. And I understand what this is like. I likewise remember when I first started reading some of the books in this library, or even when I was in my teenage years and I felt like I was the particularly edgy, kind of like out there individual and I wanted to talk about philosophy at the party. I get it. Kind of embarrassed to think, looking back, of, wow, I just couldn't have a normal conversation, could I? But it's a boundary issue. It's actually a boundary issue. You don't have the right level, until you've healed this pattern, you don't have the right level of calibration of how much you let in and how much you give out. And if you're at the stage in life where you know how much to share with the right kinds of people in different contexts in your life, and you're not reading healing books and going into the office and getting everyone to do inner child work or trauma healing, you're not at the gym talking about transpersonal psychology, and you're not doing some Jungian dream interpretation with your toddler, you just understand what's the appropriate sharing. And this relates to the next green flag, which is, well, that becomes a lot easier. With green flag 16, you have at least one good friend or one close family member or one romantic partner who you can truly be yourself with. If you have one person in your life, just one person, you don't need a massive friend group. You don't need to be the most popular person in your city. Just one person who you can really be honest with, who you can let the many sides of yourself come out and interact and play and be challenged, be criticized, be morphed and fed together, and it's mutually supportive and it's not repressive. All of the different aspects of depth with at least one person, and they do the same for you. You've got a very beautiful relationship and you should be proud of that. They should be proud of that, and I hope that it feels good in the space between the two of you. If you have that boundary of the outer world and the inner world, and you know how to let someone into the appropriate level, these three green flags altogether are such a wonderful place to exist. Let's move over onto green flag number 17. I'm going to say it, I'm going to take a sip. Number 17 green flag, you have a good relationship with God. Which can mean many things for many different people. For me personally, it means that I live a life of devotion to the best of my ability, and this is devotion on a personal level where I look after my physical form, I look after my emotional well-being, and I look after my mental health. And it's also what you're seeing me doing in this exact moment of creating consistently, hopefully high-quality videos for free on YouTube for as long as I can, to try and make a difference, to try and live in service. I have private client work, I've done other types of service out there in the world, but the primary form of devotion that I really anchor myself to, which mirrors my relationship to God, which really tries to solidify my place in the world as a servant of something that's greater than me, is building this library and sharing as much wisdom from incredible teachers as I can for free, and looking after myself enough at a high level to be able to do it with good energy and good feelings and a high level of creativity. And who knows where it might go, but that's my personal relationship with God. Maybe for you, you've healed certain patterns around family stories with God. Maybe that word itself is already still a little bit triggering, and you say the universe or great spirit or whatever new age term you want to use. That's up to you. If you have a relationship, and if you have a good relationship with God, that is a massive green flag, and it's something that you can count on for the rest of your life. Let's move on to red flag. I keep saying red flag, it's because this mug is red, so I'm seeing the word red, or the color red. Green flag number 18. You take your shadow work seriously, and that means that you've checked out the shadow work library, you've watched the shadow work series playlist, you've made the 5-hour commitment to watch all of that high-level content, and your shadow work isn't something which you've repressed into the shadow. I'm sure you've already done this. Anyway, green flag number 20, you enjoy offline days. I have lost the thread. There's too much going on. It's a long video. Tell you what, I'm going to pull it right back. Green flag number 19. This is why you don't do massive list videos, but it's 2024 coming up, so I'm doing a 24 green flags. Forgive the messiness. I'm going to keep it in. I do everything in one take. Green flag number 19. You have offline days and you have an offline social media life. You don't live everything through the screen. If you figured out your boundaries in relationship to social media, you are far ahead of other people, because most of us are stuck in that screen scrolling, attention draining state. If you have an offline day, ideally one offline day, or at least healthy boundaries in the morning or the evening, you've got a major green flag to be proud of, and it ties into number 20, which is once you've established offline days. For me personally, I do Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Every single week, I take that off social media, even though my work is being online. I still find a way to take 3 days off of Instagram and not respond to people, and boundaries with my clients, consensually agreed. I don't need to be online all of the time, and I'm still very active on the internet. You don't need to be online, but if you're not online, then what are you going to do? One of the green flags that I recommend you cultivate is green flag number 20. You enjoy spending time in nature. You're not forcing yourself to be in nature. It's not a compulsive, I need to tick it off my list, go on a walk in nature, like, oh, not again. You actually enjoy being outside. You look forwards to it every day. You enjoy that moment in the middle of the workday where you go for a little walk, or maybe you have a hike every other weekend. Time in nature is healing and restorative. It's literally spending time in green spaces, and there couldn't be a greater green flag than that wonderful connection with natural, earthy energy. It is healing, it's grounding, and it's something to really prioritize in your life. Final 4 green flags now, wrapping up the video. My voice is definitely a little bit cold as a result of it being the middle of winter, so I'm going to take another sip right now. Please forgive me. Green flag number 21. You don't experience violent mood swings. There are no high highs and no low lows. You know how to regulate your emotions. You don't let fate be decided by your mood. You may have had a traumatic background. You may have had a destabilizing, stressful situation, but you cap your highs and you cap your lows. You bring it into that middle zone. You self-regulate through trauma-based somatic therapy. You know how to breathe. You know how to calm down. This actually relates back to green flag number 13 with knowing how to rest and having a sleep schedule and a work schedule. You know how to look after yourself. Your high highs and your low lows, it's something that I've explored on this channel several times before in full videos of emotional regulation and nervous system regulation in particular. You know how to do it. If you know what I mean, you know how bad it was in the past where your moods would take you all over the place, and now you're in a bit more control. That's a huge green flag. Number 21, you don't experience these violent mood swings, but number 22 and number 23 both tie into your ability to regulate your own emotions. You need to know where you came from. Green flag number 22, you know where you came from because you've done your trauma work. You've assessed your childhood history, you've looked at your family of origin story, and you know the major patterns with your mom and with your dad, and you don't try and run from the facts. You accept what was there, and even if it's painful, even if there's unhealed wounds, you've done a genuinely sincere effort to try and understand the past, and that's normally through things like journaling, maybe working with a therapist or a coach, or otherwise reading some of the books I've been recommending on this channel, and finding the patterns and connecting the dots. If you know what happened in the past, you can be living in the present and enjoy the present, which are what many of these green flags realistically relate to. It's being present, it's being grounded, it's being aware, but you're also prepared for green flag 23, which is you know where you're going, and you're excited about your future. You have a plan that motivates you. You've got career plans, relationship plans, you've got fitness plans, spiritual plans, maybe a New Year's resolution or two, whatever it might be, whatever the time of year might be, it doesn't matter. You've got a vision for the next year, 5 years, 10 years, even if it's somewhat ambiguous. That's not even the important part. The important part to really celebrate is that you feel excited. You're hopeful. If you're hopeful and if you're optimistic, that's something that people don't have by default. If you're not fully there just yet, you can cultivate this by being grateful for the day-to-day things, but fundamentally, you're not going to be able to create that separation between the difficult past and the hopeful future unless you've properly addressed the difficult past, which is why that's a green flag in itself. And then it leads on to having a hopeful future, but the hopeful future will not come to much unless you've got green flag 24, the final green flag of this wonderfully messy video. And it's about self-trust and self-acceptance, because green flag 24, you do the things that you say you're going to do on a consistent basis. Almost a meta moment right now that there are several moments in this video where if I was a different type of YouTuber, I'd cut it up and try and avoid the messiness of me calling them red flags or drinking from a mug and having human tendencies. But my value system is I do the things that I say I'm going to do, which means I want this video to come out to you on time, and it means just keeping it raw. I do one-take videos. That's my pledge to myself, but also my life overall. All of those little pledges, and the little pledges in your life, the little agreements that you make with yourself, and the big agreements as well that you really plan your future around, they won't mean much if you don't follow through on your word. And you really need to cultivate that sense of consistent self-agreement. Otherwise, you can't really rely on where you're going because you don't actually trust yourself to get there. If you already have this and you've done a few things this year which really prove that you can set an intention and then follow through on it and achieve a goal or heal a certain wound or fix a certain relationship, that's something to be immensely proud of. Because it's self-reliance. It's a deep level of self-trust which can't be faked, it can't be bought through status, it can't be affirmed or validated through any kind of social media praise or anything that's coming from your loved ones or your romantic partner. None of that will affect the deep feeling of, I can trust myself. I know that with 80%, hopefully 90% of accuracy, if I say I'm going to do something, if I say I'm going to go sober, if I say I'm going to look after my body, if I say I'm going to stay in work that keeps me happy, if I stay, so many of these green flags all come together on this final closing point. You can rely on your own word. And that's a place to close this. 24 green flags all together. I could do a rapid fire round. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take one more sip. We're going to do a rapid fire round. So for anyone that's just skipped to the end of the video, here's the entire video all put together. Let's try and do it in about 90 seconds. Okie dokie. 24 green flags all summarized in a short attention span, short form, real format. Number 1 green flag, you've stopped apologizing for things that you shouldn't apologize about. Number 2, you started apologizing for the right kinds of things. Number 3, you know the difference between safety and stagnation. Number 4, you've stopped lying so much and you've stopped exaggerating the truth. Number 5, you exercise at least 3 times per week. Number 6, you're sober, or at least sober-minded, and you're limiting your consumption. Number 7, you're eating organic food and drinking clean water, and junk food is no longer appealing. Number 8, you know how to manage your money. You've got the balance between spending and saving. Number 9, you've developed a reading habit and you're actively learning about yourself. I don't know if I even said that one. I may have missed out an entire green flag, in which case, what a messy video. I accept myself nonetheless. Number 10, you're healing your sensual side. You don't pedestalize romance and various relationships with adult entertainers on the internet. Number 11, you don't escape into compulsive fantasy. Number 12, you rate your work days 8 out of 10 on a consistent basis. Number 13, you know how to rest. You have a sleep schedule and a work schedule. Number 14, you have inwards boundaries, you limit what's coming in with the energetic vampires of the world. And number 15 green flag, you don't overshare with people who are inappropriate, but you do have number 16 green flag, which is at least one good friend or family member that you can be honest and be yourself with. Number 17, you have a good relationship with God. Number 18, you take your shadow work seriously. And once again, you've clicked the link in the description and watched the shadow work playlist. Number 19, you have offline days or know how to take breaks from social media. Number 20, you enjoy spending time in nature, maybe on your offline days. Number 21, you don't experience the violent mood swings between high highs and low lows. 22, you know where you've come from. 23, you know where you're going. And 24, you can rely on yourself because you take your own words seriously. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Join me over in the shadow work playlist if you haven't watched it already. We're getting practical and I'm far more hydrated, which is a big green flag because what a video this has been. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you over there.